Welcome back to Apex Sci-Fi. Today we delve into the most subtle and terrifying weapon in the human arsenal, the ability to understand what makes another species' skin crawl. We look at the war of the mind, and the day the humans became the monsters under the bed. In the study of xenopsychology, every intelligent race has what we call genetic scars. These are deep-seated, instinctual fears passed down from their ancestors, remnants of a time when they were not the apex predators of their own worlds. For the Krell-Vak, a reptilian species that rose from the swamps of a dying star, that fear was the Shaxval or the Void-Wraith. According to their legends, the Shaxval was a tall, spindly entity that moved without sound, possessed no face, and could mimic the voices of the dead to lure its prey into the deep muck. It was the ultimate boogeyman, a story told to Krell-Vak hatchlings to keep them from wandering away from the hive fires. When the Krell-Vak invaded the jungle colony of Xylos 4, they brought their most advanced thermal sensors, their heavy plasma repeaters, and their elite scouting legions. They were a modern, secular empire that had long ago dismissed the Shaxval as primitive superstition. They believed they were fighting a conventional war against a conventional human militia. High Commander Varkas of the Krell-Vak 3rd Talon stood at the center of his command post, surrounded by the hum of cooling fans and the flicker of digital maps. "The humans are retreating into the deep canopy," he signaled to his officers. "They think the thickness of the flora will protect them. They do not realize our sensors can track the heat of a single insect. We will flush them out with fire and steel. There is nothing in these woods that we cannot see." Varkas was a master of logistics and firepower. But he made a fatal error. He assumed that because the Krell-Vak had forgotten their ghosts, the ghosts had forgotten them. He did not know that the human 9th Spectre Battalion had spent the last 3 weeks doing nothing but studying the Krell-Vak's ancient folklore, their religious texts and their biological fear responses. The humans knew that every species has an uncanny valley, that specific point where something looks almost right, but just wrong enough to trigger a primal fight-or-flight response. The first night on Xylos 4 was silent. The Krell-Vak sensors were working perfectly, showing nothing but trees and small native fauna. But at exactly midnight the audio sensors began to pick up a sound. It was a rhythmic, high-frequency clicking. It was the exact sound the Shaxval was said to make before it fed. "It is just the wind through the hollow reeds," Varkas told his men over the comms. "Focus on the heat signatures. Ignore the sound." But then the voices started. The audio sensors began to pick up the voices of Krell-Vak soldiers who had been killed in the initial landing. They were whispering names. They were pleading for help. They were coming from the deepest, darkest parts of the jungle where the thermal sensors showed absolutely nothing. "Commander, the sensors show 0 heat." A frightened technician reported. "But I can hear Private Zog. He is calling my name. He is right outside the perimeter. Stay at your posts." Varkas roared. "It is a recording. The humans are playing a recording." But it wasn't just a recording. The humans were using infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that are below the threshold of hearing but can cause physical feelings of dread, nausea, and the sensation of being watched. They were literally vibrating the Krell-Vak's internal organs at the frequency of fear. On the second night, the Ghost Squad began the visual phase. They didn't use high-definition, 4K holograms. They knew that a perfect image is easy to dismiss as a fake. Instead, they used low-resolution, flickering projections. They projected the image of tall, spindly, faceless figures moving between the trees at the very edge of the Krell-Vak's vision. Because the Krell-Vak had 360-degree vision, their brains were constantly processing huge amounts of peripheral data. The humans exploited this by making the Shaxval appear only in the corners of their eyes. When a soldier turned to look, the image would vanish. It was the Uncanny Valley in full effect. The figures looked just enough like the legends to be recognizable, but distorted enough to be terrifying. "I saw it." A Krell-Vak guard screamed, firing his plasma rifle into the empty dark. It was the Void-Wraith. It had no face. It was 10 feet tall. "Our sensors are lying to us. They cannot see the spirits. Cease fire." Varkas commanded, but it was too late. The panic was spreading like a virus through the hive mind. The Krell-Vak, a species that relied on collective certainty, was fracturing. If the sensors, the very foundation of their reality, couldn't see what their eyes were seeing, then the sensors were useless. The humans were also using synthetic pheromones. They were spraying the Krell-Vak camp with a chemical compound that mimicked the death scent of a Krell-Vak. To the aliens, the air itself began to smell like a mass grave. Their biology was telling them they were already dead. Captain Elias Thorne, the leader of the 9th Spectres, sat in a hidden bunker 2 miles away, watching the thermal feed of the Krell-Vak camp. He wasn't looking at soldiers. He was looking at a chaotic mess of heat signatures moving in panicked circles. "They're ready," Thorne said, his voice calm. "They've stopped being a military. They're just a bunch of terrified animals now. Initiate the final sequence." The humans activated the wailing wall. They used hidden high-output speakers to blast a wall of discordant, bone-chilling screams, while simultaneously projecting thousands of flickering faceless figures into the center of the camp. They didn't fire a single bullet. They didn't need to. The Krell-Vak snapped. Elite soldiers, masters of plasma warfare, threw down their weapons and ran blindly into the jungle, screaming about the Void-Wraith. They fired at their own shadows. They fought each other in the dark, convinced their comrades were the Shaxx Val in disguise. Varkas tried to restore order, but when he saw a faceless, glowing figure standing at the foot of his command bed, a simple hologram projected from a drone, he too felt the weight of 10,000 years of genetic fear. He didn't fire. He just closed his eyes and waited for the end. The Ninth Spectres walked into the camp at dawn. They found most of the Krell-Vak in a state of catatonic shock. Others had fled into the deep canopy, where they would eventually be picked up by recovery teams. The war for Xylos 4 was won without a single human casualty. When the Galactic Council reviewed the logs, they were horrified. Not by the violence, but by the psychological cruelty of the human tactics. They saw a species that didn't just fight with guns, but with the very architecture of the soul. "The humans do not just kill you," the Council's chief inquisitor wrote in his report. "They find the thing you feared when you were a child, the thing your ancestors whispered about in the caves, and they give it form. They are the only species in the galaxy that has mastered the art of being the other. Do not fight them in the dark. In the dark, the humans are whatever they want you to be afraid of." Humanity had proven the ultimate psychological HFY truth. The most powerful weapon isn't a laser or a bomb. It's the uncanny. It's the ability to reach into the mind of your enemy and pull out their own demons. We are the architects of the nightmare. We are the ones who know that sometimes, the best way to win a war is to make the enemy too afraid to even open their eyes. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. Don't look behind you. If you enjoyed this victory of human psychology over alien instinct, hit that like button. Comment below, what is the mythical monster from your culture that would terrify an alien? Subscribe for the next front of the Apex Factor, the Fever Legion. The jungle is quiet. The ghosts are resting.